Welcome, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. I'll be your host for today, Jared. If you have any questions, feel free to type a question in the chat or in the QA section. I'll have both of those up available on my screen, so I will be able to see if you have any chats or any questions over anything about decisions related stuff. While we're waiting, we do have a decisions support channel on YouTube where we post new videos. We actually have a new video that we've posted recently over decisions report views. So if you want to see all of the different capabilities of decisions report views, we have that new video posted as well. So you can easily get to see what are the different parts of views that we have there in the tool. So we have that. And we also have other good videos that you can then watch and learn how to create any of that stuff. So just wanted to inform you of that. We also have our Submerse event happening tomorrow. And if you haven't signed up, still try to sign up as soon as possible and join that Submerse training. It starts tomorrow. It's a 3-day event. There will be a foundations track as well as a more advanced track where you can learn more about decisions and more about all of the different capabilities therein. And then we have some special guests that will be there, like Steve Crum from the CTO of Fire Recovery USA, and some other customers that you can connect with and get to talk to while you're there. So love to see you. I'll be there. Robert will be there. So if you want to see more of us and see how we can better help you in your training needs, talk to us there. And if you can't make the Virginia Beach one, we do have some other ones happening at other locations. And one is in Singapore for our customers on that side of the globe. We also have a virtual Submerge deep dive training event that will be happening on October 14th through the 16th. We also will have a Vegas event with Decisions and Datamatics. So we'll be sponsoring that with them. So if you want to visit the Decisions booth, there'll be a couple of the sales engineers there if you want to talk to them. And then we'll also have rounding out our other Submerse event will be November 12th through 14th. So we've got a couple of options. Please attend. If you do attend and you do the foundation track, it counts as an equivalent of completing product training. So if you want to jumpstart your online learning today, that will be the way to do it. So all right, enough of my little introductory spiel. What else? Oh, we also have the App Store. The App Store is also great as well. If you want to check out our App Store, the marketplace, so we can easily see of the information there. And let's see, I'm going to replace the current share, and I'll show you guys on my screen there. We also have, I think it's like Marketplace. What's that link again? I thought it was like Marketplace.
It
It is
is. It's
Marketplace.
marketplace.decisions.com.
Thank you. That's what I thought. Yep. And then we also have a list of projects that we have been working on and have built. So as this thing retrieves the list of the projects, we got things like playbook manager, support ticketing, loan origination, dynamic questionnaire. We got it all, right? Not really. We got 5. We got 5. We are constantly making more and adding to that repertoire that we have right here. So you can easily go into your local instance, whether it be version 9 or version 8, and you can download those projects from the App Store here and utilize them in your project. So I think we also have a forum page. So if you have any questions, I think forum.decisions.com is what it's called. Nope. I think it's support.decisions.com/forum. I think that's what it's called. Haha. Or I'm sorry, community.decisions.com. You can join our community. We post our lunch and learns. We also post any questions that people may have that we've answered in tickets or in documentation. All of that will be found here. And so this is a good resource if you're building. You can definitely access this information right here. So I'll share that community.decisions.com link with you guys in the chat. And it's just another great resource as you build and automate more and automate everything in your company. All right. Pause there. Phew. All right. I got all of it out. All right. Any comments or questions about decisions? Looks like we got one. Let's see. I'm gonna give you, Alexander, permission to talk, and I'll also read your question aloud. I have a workflow that accepts files. How can I reject a file if it contains data I do not want? Could you give a little more context? What do you mean data that you don't want? It's kind of loud in the office today. Okay, well, I'll try to answer it the best that I can. So I'm not sure what kind of data you don't want, but I can demonstrate some cool things you can do about like files. So if I have a file here, and let me like just say, let me define an input and call it file and file data, right? So you can do that. It may take a little bit. With the file data, you can say like, I only want files that are of a certain file type, because Decisions does a good job in our file data type. It will tell you the type, whether it's an Excel, a PDF, a Word, whatever it is, right? And so if you don't want to run certain things, then you can definitely see what the type is and then filter out about that type. Kind of a lot of the opposite. Let's see. So users sometimes upload files contain products. Some of these products are obsolete. I want to remove these and let the user know. Is what kind of file you're dealing with? Are you dealing with an Excel file, or are you just dealing with the contents of the file? Excel file. Okay, cool. I'm going to operate under the context that it is not an Excel file, and don't worry, I will answer the question with the Excel file since that's the actual question. But there's some cool things that I want to show here. That there is this really fascinating step. I don't know why my local is taking a little bit to load. There we go. And let me remove some of the tabs that I have. Maybe that'll speed it up. Okay, cool. So there's a cool step where you can say get string from bytes. I think get string from bytes. And what this does is it allows you to get, oh, the wrong one. Get string from bytes. I did the reverse. So you can also get bytes from string as well. What I wanted to show here is, let's say I do have a file that I upload, and let's say I'm just going to put in a, just kind of a text file, right? So if I go ahead and do this and just add in some type of text file, and let's say I want to determine what's inside of that, right? I can run my process, and with this step, I can actually see what that string text data is, so I can get more information from that as well. So all I have to do here is select from flow, grab the file data and the contents from that list of bytes. And I know that internally in training, we're actually working on creating a video of how this works, so you can get to see like the applicable projects that you use it for. But I'm going to debug this, and let's say I'm going to add in that kind of notepad document that I said. And so what happens is here is it takes in the bytes of that data and then translates that into um, user readable text. So you can easily see what that document has in stock, right? I know it's not the question you have, but it is a good step to know that you can see the contents of an actual file by merely converting the bytes to a string. So that's just a good thing to be aware of. All right, cool. Now to your actual question. What about an Excel file? Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do this. So let's say I'm going to create a quick Excel file. It's really funny, actually. That's why I was a little late joining this meeting, is because I had my head buried in Excel. So let's say I have an Excel file, right? We'll say this is products, and let's say this is what is it? Yeah, product, and then we'll say this is, I don't know, price or something, and we'll just have these two things. And let's say I have a hammer. Let's say it's $2. Right? I'm just making this up just to kind of build a scenario that I would want to filter out stuff. Let's say we have a uh, bandsaw or a saw. Let's just do it that way. We'll say the price is 3. Right, we're making it very cheap today. And let's see. I don't know. We're making stuff up as we go along, people. $1 for a book. That's kind of nice. And then we'll say for a oh, what's another thing we could have? Let's say a lamp. Boom, we'll do a lamp, and we'll say this is 15, right? Let's say there are certain products that we deprecated and we want to remove them from this Excel spreadsheet. So let me save this, and we'll say this is we'll say test book 1 is what I'll call this. And let me go ahead and I'm going to move this off screen real quick. And I'm going to save this to my local. Somewhere over the rainbow. And we'll put this in documents for the test. A loss leader, exactly, 100%. It's exactly what it is. Let's see. So I'll put this in documents. Okay, cool. So now let's say I can go through this. Um, I can go through this Excel file, right? So I can do this for each Excel for each in row, right? And I can put in, we'll say select from flow of my file. Boom. And then what I can do is with this next row, I can easily go ahead and then I can add a string, string equals or whatever, or string is in list, right? Next, case insensitive. And let's say if the string is in the list of, I don't know, we'll say the saw because we'll remove that one. And then the value will be the first property of my Excel data row. Boom. So I'll say, and then if it's true, we're going to move to another process because it's in a list. And then if it's false, I'm going to add a placeholder step right here. We can use our thinking caps and imagine this thing does something intelligent. And this will be, run our intelligent process. Boom, bingo, right? And so what I can do here is I can say, okay, if it is in this list, we're just going to skip it and go to the next one. And then on the true path right here, I can say, uh, notify user that this is not offered anymore, right? And so you're creating a logic that's somewhat kind of like this, where I can say, okay, if it's in this list, go ahead and run this. So if I do this, you'll easily be able to see because my data set is pretty small. Let me go ahead and go to my documents. And then documents, and then I have, was it book one? I think I called it book one. What did I call this thing? Yeah, book one. So I want to move book one over here. We're going to run this here. It's going to process for each Excel row. And boom, so we get to see that it ran 5 times. I think I forgot to tell it to ignore the first row. So that's why it ran an extra iteration. Let's run it one more time. Right? So as you can see here, I can go through each execution and I can say, hey, is the value hammer in the list of saw? Nope. So it goes down this path on the false path. But if I go down on the third execution, is the value of book saw? Nope. Where is it? Is it the second one? I think it's the second one. Is the value of saw? It goes down the true path and it will run whatever process that I have here. So that's a way that you can kind of handle that where you can say, depending on the different types of information that we have, I want that to be outputted or run a different process to say, hey, this is deprecated or this is not. The thing that you will need to be aware of is kind of like the scalability, right? Let's say I run this and let's say there's another thing that we deprecate, right? Let's say I deprecate the hammer, right? And so I want to be able to, right? So if I go here, I don't want to actually have a constant list in a flow because it's not very scalable. It's a little hard to have the flow kind of automatically, take in certain elements that are, dynamically because I've just set up this input as a constant. So what you could do is you can create a simple way you can do it is you can create a data structure. And what you can do with that is you can create let me go back to this. We can create system constants, not health configuration. You can create variables and constants where you can say, let's say not a constant. I think it's like a lookup list. Is it a lookup list? Yeah, lookup list flow. And then you can have one place where you can update it and you can say, cool, we're going to update this. So now if I want to add a hammer into it, I just go to one location, add hammer to the constant, and then reference that local area for deprecation. So what if the obsolete items are in a database and a need to run it through a comparison for validations? Perfect. If they're already in a database that you need to compare for, what I would do is I would create a lookup list and you can pass in an object, right? And so what I can do here, I can say this is fetch deprecated items. What is it? Deprecated, yeah, items. We're just going to call this for right now. Fetch deprecated items. Now, what this does, it allows you to say, okay, cool. I can output an object. Object is just a decision's way of saying you can pass anything into it, even though it will yell at you and complain. So if I do this, imagine for me that my fetch entities step, I'm just going to fetch all of this data. And I'm just going to fetch the accounts table that I have, right? Imagine this is my database that already has a list of comparisons that I need to run, right? And then on the output of this step, all I need to do is select from flow and then grab that entity result. And then what I can do here is now I can go back into my flow, right? Since I created this lookup list, what this does is when I go back in here, I now have a new constant called fetch deprecated items, or it's probably a poor term. I should just call it deprecated items. And then what I can do is in my string is list, all I have to do is select from flow, go through my deprecated items, and then filter through. In this case, I need to find a string list to compare to. So I'll say, what is it? All email address, right? Because that's got string data. And so now what I've created is it's going to always pass in that database lookup list, or not database lookup list. It will pass in those record details, and then you can select it from the input mapping in your data explorer. And then every time there's a new deprecated item that comes up, you can add it to the list by writing to your table, and decisions will automatically read that. So is looklist in version 9? It's also in version 8 as well. In version 8, it's just in a different location. So instead of, let me just clear this. I'll go back to a constant test 2. It's just in a different location. In version 9, it's going to be housed in the variables, constants, and then lookup list. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I don't need it anymore. Delete the flow. I don't need it. In version 8, you'll find this in settings, in designers, and in lookup lists and constants. So yours would be in this location if you're in version 8. But in version 9, you could do it on the project hub level, which is recommended because then when you export your projects to repo and back out, you'll have all that information there. And it's all in that project hub. So that's how I would handle that issue. My pleasure. Any other questions? Why use a lookup list instead of a data structure? You would use both. So the thing that you would do is when you create a lookup list and constant in decisions, go to manage. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Configuration, variables, constants, variables, lookup lists. You would use, it's a lookup list flow. And so what you would do is you would combine that with your data structure and say, okay, I created this data structure called deprecated items, and it contains all of the list of items that are deprecated. And then all the lookup list does is it just provides a variable in your data explorer that you can always point to whenever you create a flow. So lookup list flows are a little different from like, a lookup table. It's not the same thing. The lookup list flow just means, okay, when you create a new flow, it's just going to add this variable there that you can always pull from. And the reason why I recommended it is because if you add more stuff to your data structure, and you're pulling from that, and you're just fetching everything, then you'll be able to access it across all the flows that need it in a scalable manner. Otherwise, if you did that, then what you'd have to do is you'd have to create a data structure in your flow, fetch it, which is not performant, and then do some evaluating there. Another thing you could do, but this is me just thinking out loud, is if you do have that integration data structure and you just want to check to see if something exists in the table, is it kind of like VLOOKUP? You could consider it. It's kind maybe not really. It's more of like if you want to have extra data to evaluate dynamically. Because the VLOOKUP in Excel just says, hey, grab the property from this other sheet or whatever and add it and tack it to the end with a lookup property. Lookup list just says, okay, you have a new property of all your accounts in your Data Explorer. Now you can do whatever you want without having to fetch the accounts again because it's already there in the Data Explorer. So think of it as it's managing what types of stuff appears here. See how I have this deprecated items, right? It's a lookup data. So that it's just a way to build your Data Explorer to already have these pre-existing attributes here. That's pretty much what the best way to think of it as, but not as a not as a lookup. But I think mine still exists. Deleted. Set archive date. Let me go inside. New. Let's see. What was the other thing? There was something else I wanted to talk about. You triggered a good thought in my head that I wanted to talk about. Look it up list, doing it that way. There's something about fetching. Oh, that's what it was. If another thing you could do since you already have the database table, instead of fetching it at one place like I did with the lookup list, an even more performant way is if you have that integration with that table already, you can, let me go to my flow, alpha one. And if I go to my database integration database and local connection, I think there is a projects by month. That's just a view. Oh, there we go. So like whenever you create and so I have two views, but you also have exists a query whenever you do create a query integration. So this is a database view, but you can also do it with a external integration, and you can just say, hey, does this thing exist in the table in the deprecated table? And then what that would look like. So imagine this is your actual like step where this is um a deprecated item, right? So then what our flow would look like instead would be on this part. Nope, no, not that part. No, I messed it up. Undo, undo. Perfect. So then what it would look like instead of doing this, you would just say, hey, does this exist in here? And if it does exist, this is the done path. And if it failed because it returned no results, you would go down that other path. Let's see what the outcomes are. Add outcome. Output outcome name, data changes, output snippets data list. Oh, cool. So you have this does exist. Yeah, oh, never mind. You don't need that. So you have the perfect. Okay, cool. So then failed, it wouldn't be failed. It outputs a true or false Boolean. And so you can evaluate that with a simple value is true or false. There was the true. There was a true rule. They remove it. True false rule? What is this? I'm wondering if that's what it is. Then you can evaluate whether this is true or false. And then if it's true, it's in the deprecated, run our deprecated process. And then if it is false, then run our intelligent process that does something different. And then if that thing fails, then you probably want to throw an exception of some sort. So that's kind of like the rough draft logic I would do is if it is an external database connection, utilize the does exist query for better. So is it a bad practice to fetch within a flow? Also for the work, also for the entire lookup list needs to contain only obsoletes. Yes, or some place where you can get to that list of obsoletes, right? Or you can do it the other way, right? Where it's like only the valid ones. It depends on how you want to look at it. Let me preface what I mean. Fetching is not necessarily bad in a flow, but you always want to make sure that when you are utilizing fetch logic, that you only fetch the data when you need it, right? We have seen different bills from different people where it's like, hey, fetch the data, and then you run the process, and then later on in the flow they say, oh, fetch the same entire set of data again. And so then what you do is every time you use a fetch in decisions, it's chattered to the database. So it's not necessarily a bad practice to utilize a fetch. It's just you just have to be aware of the database chatter that you're having. And so if you do need data, it's best to always fetch all of that data from the beginning of the flow and only interact with the data when it's fetched one time. You don't want to just have multiple fetches going on in a specific process because it can cause some performance degradation. So that's what I meant by that. That's not necessarily a bad practice. It's something you just need to be thinking about that, hey, let me fetch this data once. And one of the logic that we utilize to avoid like, fetch entities where criteria is this thing in the deprecated list, you can utilize a does exist query because it just checks it if it's in the list in the database without having to fetch all the data. So it's a more performant way to do kind of checks when you need to determine like if one property exists or record exists in a table, right? So that's what I meant by that. Not that it's necessarily bad practice. You just want to be careful of the performance implications of fetching all the time. That's all. Sure, go right ahead. Where's the Jeremy? Go ahead, Jeremy. What's your question over the wait on external system step?
Just understanding what the service definition options are for. The documentation doesn't go into detail on that. So I'm just wondering what those configuration pieces are for and if I should be using them.
Isn't it like a form? Yeah, it's like a form thing. Service definition. I feel like that's the I want to say that's like the URL parameters that the external system has to call. So exclude all, set callback. Like if you want to set a specific callback parameter,
What I'm using it for is to query another database table in another system. So it's not doing API calls. I just need to query another table to see if when a record appears to then move on in the process.
Oh, interesting. So is that really the best? Well, so if you're just trying to query a table to see if a record is in the table.
Yeah, so like my use case is where I'm
Yeah.
doing an onboarding process to where we create our Active Directory account, which then will eventually populate in 2 or 3 other systems automatically, but those syncs only happen at certain times.
Sure.
So I want to have the flow pause and wait until the account appears in that other system to then move on to the next piece of the process.
Got it. Okay. Then I think then the callback URL I think is, hold on, let me do this. Exclude accounts and groups, I think is to allow that external system to call this process, say, okay, here's the process you have to start back once you've found that piece of information.
Because the way have one of them set up is I just use under the timer settings, I create that private flow that just is querying the database until it sees it there. But I didn't know what the service definition was for, if that was a different kind of thing, or if I should be utilizing both the service definition and the timer settings.
Looking at accounts and groups, folder, specified date. Okay. Service. Sure, desired name of the service allows you to define the outcome paths. Okay, so you create the outcome paths. Allows the data to be available. Okay, that we don't need. Set a callback, allows user to encode the callback URL. Timer settings, check time span. Check for autocomplete scenarios. Check time span on step run. Start flow type. Just don't see, let me go back to it. I want to see what the. That's if we said this. What's the name of the outcome? What is the service definition? Generate service. I wonder if that's the thing that gets called. Let's just run it. Constant test. I'm just curious to see what the output of this step is. And then was it, we have to set up the outcome path, right? Let's just set up one outcome, service outcomes. Okay, cool. So let's create a service outcome. Service outcomes, we'll say this is the done, and we'll add the done. And it's a string of text. Cool, cool. So that's done. So we run here. What happens if I run this? So it's this time. Oh, I didn't assign it to anybody. Oh, it is. So it's assigned to external system. Oh, that's what I wanted. I want to see what the inputs of the. So it's just a group. Nothing in the assignment. I'm gonna ask. Let me see if I can find out what. See if the team knows what it is. Da-da-da. So we got support teams. Service definition on wait on external system step. What is the function of the wait on external steps service definition? Definition. Let me put this in here. Hit backspace that. Let me just highlight this thing real quick. Thing I want to highlight is this. And I see there's a question in the chat. Give me 1 second. I will check it out. Boom. All right. We are good. Post. You need to create a flow under the external system form so that flow knows when to complete the assignment on the exit and done path. Create a flow under external system form. Oh, here we go. Interesting. I wonder if it's this. Term form custom. Okay, I didn't notice that. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, you said, was it you need to create a flow under external system form? All right, cool. Create a flow under external system. I guess just the autocomplete flow for exposed data on a service name. I feel like it has something to do with that integration detail thing. Interaction we're using. Flow tracking ID, redirect. Outcome path done. Inactivate APIs. What is this? Oh, okay, that's the custom-based form-based service help. I believe it's something to do with this. Edit the exit on the outcome.
I have tested just using the timer settings and that flow there. I just didn't know if that was my best option, or I really was just curious what the service stuff would do
Yeah.
differently. But that seems more geared toward if you're trying to call an API than just
Yeah.
query another system.
Well, I think you would run and then there has to be some setup. Let me create maybe I could see if I can create a small example offline. Because it's definitely something that we'd have to edit something over here if you, depending on the application you're waiting on, and then it has to call like, oh, go back to, this URL based on the step tracking ID. So I believe it's something over there, but let me see if I can create a small example that demonstrates that. And I think the service definition that gets created, I think that's the form for the step right here. My inclination is that the step ID, where is right here? I believe it would be that. I could be wrong. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I'd have to test. I'll test offline. Could you put your email in the chat and I'll make sure that I can send you a little project.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've interacted with that step. Thank you. All right. Any other questions that we can talk about and get to? Oh, there we go. All right, we'll give about a couple more minutes, see if anyone has any questions, and if there isn't, then we'll end. It is not good practice to use the wait on external system step if your process is going to wait for a long time and your instances of that flow will stack up as running flows and just use up lots of memory. Yep, that is a good thing to remember. For that. All right, cool. We got about a minute before we'll end the lunch and learn, so we can get the recording uploaded to YouTube. If there are no more questions. Alrighty, I think that's going to conclude our lunch and learn for today. Tomorrow, and for the rest of the week, since me and Robert will be at the Submerse event, it will be Jeremy. So you'll have a lot of Jeremy this week, and he'll be able to help you and assist you with questions that you may have. So thank you so much for attending, and I'll see you guys next time.